The Brannock family arrives in Westfield, New Jersey, to look at a property they're planning to purchase. The parents are in awe of how the neighborhood looks. Nora thinks everything looks pretty, and Dean says it's paradise. Their daughter Ellie asks if they'll buy the house, to which Nora replies they need to see it first. Their son Carter asks if they can go inside and look around. Dean sarcastically jokes that they'll only drive past the house and buy it later. When they arrive, Nora gets stunned by how gorgeous the house looks. Once inside, the Brannocks split up to have a look at the house. Dean and Ellie encounter Pearl and Jasper upstairs. Jasper, who seems to be mentally challenged, is playing with the dumbwaiter while Pearl tells him it's time to leave. Pearl says the dumbwaiter is a national treasure and introduces herself as the president of the local preservation society. She then leaves after saying it's a lovely house. Unfamiliar with what a dumbwaiter is, Dean tells Ellie to Google it and find out. Downstairs, Nora finds the person showing the house, and it turns out she's Karen, an old friend of hers from RISD. They catch up, and Karen praises Nora for making it big, as well as seeing a piece in the Times about Nora's ceramics gallery show. On the other hand, Karen says she opted for the easy way out of poverty, marrying someone rich. When they go outside to look at the pool, Nora sees Pearl staring at her from the yard. Nora introduces Karen to Dean. Realizing that his wife loves the house, he makes an offer for it. Surprised but happy, Karen says there are only 2 offers on the table and they only need to go over the asking price to get their dream house. Sometime later, Dean meets with his financial advisor, Steve. It seems that with his current income, Dean doesn't qualify for a jumbo loan to pay for the house. While they manage to find a solution to the problem, Steve says Dean is taking on a huge risk. Dean doesn't care because he is determined to give his family a bigger, more comfortable and safer place to live in. He says he'll do whatever it takes to get the house. 6 weeks later, Dean rides the train and a taxi to their newly bought home in Westfield. When he arrives there, an obscure figure watches from the distance as he enters the house. Outside, Mo and Mitch watch the movers deliver a piano inside the Brannocks' house, and most say it means trouble for them. Inside, Dean sees Nora happy about the house. They make love to celebrate their success in acquiring a new home and starting things fresh. They later get interrupted by Ellie, who claims she heard music coming from upstairs. When Dean catches up, he focuses more on why Ellie is wearing lipstick instead of the music she heard. It seems he thinks she's growing up too fast and wants her to stay young for them, for as long as she can. Some static noise comes out of the intercom and an alarm starts blaring, but it's actually from Dean's phone. While preparing coffee, Dean gets spooked to see Jasper inside the house and staring at him. He leaves the house after dropping off their daily newspaper. As Dean and Nora contemplate how Jasper got inside the house, Ellie opens a letter and reads it out loud. The letter is from someone called the Watcher, and it welcomes the family to 657 Boulevard. It seems the Watcher's family has been watching over the house for decades and continues to do so. The Watcher knows about the Brannocks moving in, from the number of kids they have, up to the renovations they plan to do in the basement. Feeling threatened by the letter, Dean and Nora interrupt the kids at school and report to the police. Believing that Westfield is one of the safest places in the country, Detective Chamberlain thinks the Brannocks aren't in danger. He also says there's not much they can do about the letter. Nora disagrees, stating they could do things like analyze the handwriting or even run DNA checks on the envelope. Despite acknowledging Nora's suggestion, Chamberlain still believes the letter is just a prank. He implies it might be Jasper doing it, since he's known in the neighborhood for doing weird but harmless stuff. In the end, while they run tests on the letter, Chamberlain will ensure that a squad car goes by the Brannocks' house every few hours. It seems the detective is aware that the Brannocks spent a huge amount of money on the house, and he wants them to feel welcome and safe. When they leave, Nora wonders how Chamberlain knows about what they had to spend to get the house. The next day, Dean confronts Mo and Mitch about gardening on his side of the property and their complaints about Ellie playing the piano. Mo feels that Dean is being rude and says that they could have been friends if he was nicer to them. The old couple leaves after saying they'll keep an eye on Dean and his family. Meanwhile, Nora and Karen hang out at the country club. Karen tells Nora not to be embarrassed for wanting a better life. In response, Nora says they aren't rich and that they have their share of financial problems. Karen then talks about his ex-husband and how she ruined his life after he made hers miserable. While walking on the boardwalk later, Nora tells Karen about the Watcher's letter. Thinking it might be from one of the house's multiple bidders, Nora asks if Karen can find out more about them. During their family meal later, Dean looks tense and bothered. He ends up complaining about Ellie wearing revealing clothes and how she's growing up too fast. Upstairs, Carter activates the dumbwaiter to play with his ferret but screams in terror after seeing Jasper inside of it. Dean leaps into action after hearing his son scream and quickly drags Jasper out of the house. Pearl realizes what happened and apologizes, saying that the dumbwaiter is Jasper's favorite. She also reveals that the previous owners let Jasper play with it because he's harmless. In his frustration, Dean threatens that he'll beat Jasper up the next time he trespasses in his house. Eventually, the confrontation ends after Dean asks Pearl to leave his property. Before leaving, Pearl says that she has her eyes on Dean and his family. Alarmed about her statement, the Brannocks decide to have a security system installed in their house. The next day, a young man named Dakota arrives to install their alarm system. Dean asks for a ballpark estimate of the cost, and it amounts to about $7,000. Dean and Nora get shocked at how expensive it is. Dean plays it off cool and pretends it's a price they can easily afford. He then hires Dakota despite it being a huge financial burden for him. While inspecting the house, Dakota runs into Ellie swimming by the pool, and they hit it off right away. Ellie pokes fun at Dakota, saying he should be careful since she's jailbait. Upstairs, a concerned Dean watches the teens interact with each other by the pool. Later that night, an obscure figure watches the house from the outside. While Carter sleeps, his ferret escapes from its cage and goes outside the room where someone picks it up. In the morning, Carter screams after he finds his pet dead in the hallway. The police rush to the scene, but once again, they can't do anything because the locks are intact and there are no signs of forced entry. In the end, Chamberlain tells them to get their security system installed so they can talk about additional steps they could take. One rainy day, Mo and Mitch are outside expressing their hatred towards Ellie's piano playing. In the evening, Dakota takes a break from installing the cameras to watch Ellie have a meal with her family. By nighttime, Karen passes by the Brannocks' house with a somewhat contemptuous expression on her face. The next day, Nora calls Karen to ask her for updates about the other bidders of the house and to inform her that she became a member of the country club. Meanwhile, Dean opens the mailbox at home and finds another letter from the Watcher. In the letter, the Watcher reveals what he or she knows about Ellie and Carter. Dean rushes to the back of the house to check on Mo and Mitch, but they aren't there. He starts to panic and runs to all the rooms in the house, hoping to find someone spying on them, but to no avail. The letter says that 657 Boulevard is the Watcher's job, life, and obsession. Since Dean and his family moved in, they are too. The Watcher says that like the past 3 families before them, greed is what brought the Brannock family to 657 Boulevard. Nora arrives and sees Dean outside, who is in a state of disarray. The couple immediately reports the incident to the police, and once again, they can't do anything about it since they don't have a culprit. Nora is convinced that Jasper is the one that did it. Chamberlain reveals that Jasper hasn't left his room in 5 days after Dean threatened him. Since there isn't much they can do, he tells them to get the cameras installed, and if that's not enough, they can hire private security too. It seems Dean has already thought of that, but can't afford to pay for it. So Chamberlain suggests they hire a private detective to do some unrestricted investigation on their case. Dean meets up with Theodora later that day, and she's a private investigator that solved 93 out of the 122 cases she's handled. She's an ex-alcoholic turned private detective because she was obsessed with solving murder cases. At first, she asks $100 per hour, but lowers it by half after Dean says he'll think about it. Dean hires Theodora and hopes that she'll figure out who the Watcher is by the time the renovations in the house are done. Meanwhile, Nora looks for a motel that is nearby. It seems she no longer feels safe sleeping in the house. She also wants to get Carter away from the house to avoid getting his asthma triggered because of the dust from all the renovations that will happen soon. So they plan to have Nora and the kids stay in a motel for the next few weeks, while Dean remains at the house to supervise the workers. When Dean returns home later, an obscure figure once again watches him from the distance. As he was about to sleep, the doorbell rings and he rushes to check outside, but finds nobody there. Then, Dean starts hearing music coming from upstairs. When he re-enters the house, someone continues watching him from afar. Dean follows the source of the music to the room with the old PA system again. When he turns it off, someone walks by behind him near the door. Not long after that, Nora receives a call at the hotel, and only hears the heavy breathing sounds of the person on the other line. Dean rushes back to the hotel the moment he learns about this. He and Nora go to the motel receptionist to ask about the caller, but find no answers. Since no one called since then, Nora tells the receptionist to dial *69 to automatically redial the caller's number. It just keeps ringing with no one answering. However, the couple doesn't realize that the phone that's ringing is the one they have back at the house. The next day, Karen tells Nora that there was only one other bid for the house, and while it was an LLC, she believes it was just a flipper. Eventually, since Nora is already scared and exhausted, Karen suggests that she should sell the house and even offers to be her realtor. Meanwhile, Dean meets with Theodora, who successfully found the previous owner of the house. She gives him the contact number and tells him not to give up on finding out who the Watcher is. She implies that Dean needs to know if he wants to continue with his life. Later in the motel, Dean and Nora call Dakota for some equipment to reinforce security in the motel. Realizing they are concerned about their security, Dakota offers to stay guard at night outside the motel for them. Since his rates are reasonable, Dean and Nora agree to hire him for the job. The next day, Dean meets up with the previous owner of the house, a talent agent named Andrew. Andrew feels obliged to help Dean because nobody helped him during his time of need. He believes that Mo and Mitch are the ones behind the letters. He thinks they are a part of a cult that loves to drink children's blood. Andrew tells Dean about what happened to him and how his life got ruined when he bought the house. The previous owner shares that one day, he returns home and learns that his wife found Mo sucking on the wounded finger of their son. He adds that even if they left the house after that incident, his wife's visions continued and she eventually took her own life. Dean talks about Jasper, and Andrew says he's a good guy. Dean then asks whom Andrew sold the house to, and he says it's some LLC. Before leaving, Andrew once again says that it's Mo and Mitch behind everything, and tells Dean to get out of the house. That night, Dakota is on guard duty outside the motel. Ellie sneaks out and startles him for fun. The two then go for a swim in the pool where they eventually share a kiss. The next day, Pearl sees construction workers going into the Brannocks family's house. She calls someone, and not long after that, Mo confronts Dean about the construction workers. Eventually, Mo calls Dean out for trying to ruin the already perfect house. The statement makes Dean question if Mo has been inside the house. He brings up what he heard from Andrew about Mo using some sort of back door or tunnel to access the house. Mo says she knows nothing about that. Tired of dealing with her, Dean tells Mo to get off his property and walks out. He then returns after hearing her say that she's watching him. This time, Dean says he knows it's Mo sending the letters and that he's also watching her now. As Mo leaves, Dean mocks her about getting vitamin D and that he'd hate to see her have melanoma. With a quivering voice, Mo says that maybe that's a battle she's already facing, implying that she has skin cancer. At work sometime later, Dean learns that he didn't become a partner because of his poor performance. While he tries to hide his disappointment from Nora while they talk on the phone, she still notices that something is wrong. Outside, a hooded person watches the house from the bushes. Later, Dean's sleep gets interrupted after he hears a gunshot. Nora and the kids visit him the next day. Dean tries to tell Nora about what he learned from Andrew, but they get interrupted by sirens wailing outside. The son of Mo and Mitch confronts Dean. It seems Mitch shot Mo and took his life after. He reveals that Mo had cancer and blames the incident on Dean because he threatened his parents based on the note he found. When they return inside the house, Dean denies threatening Mo and Mitch to Nora. Later that night, Dean is still the only one sleeping in the house. His sleep once again gets interrupted after the security alarms go off. He goes to check what happened and sees Jasper looking at him from the outside. When they lock their eyes, Jasper lets out a creepy smile before leaving.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.